Hi, I'm Mr. Williamson. This video is about the introduction to respiration and glycolysis. You probably ought to take really good notes. There's a lot of information in this video. I would still suggest the Cornell style. Look it up if you don't know what it is, because I found it works real well for students organizing their thoughts. But take notes. If you have questions, ask them in the Ed Puzzle question part questions, or in class when we get back together. Hopefully you understand. If you don't, like I said, ask questions. Let's get started. Let's talk about the introduction to respiration first. Why are we studying this? Well, because you've always been told that you have to eat and breathe. The question I have for you is why? Has anyone ever told you why you need to eat and breathe? Whenever I ask my classes this, for 30 years, I've been asking my class this at the start of this unit. Why do we need to eat and breathe? And they all say the same thing. Because if you don't, you die. And it's true. You don't eat, you don't breathe, you will die. The question is, why? Have you ever been told why you need to eat? Have you ever been told why you need to breathe? What is it about food and oxygen that we need to survive? And I'm willing to bet right now you can't answer that question, but we will by the end of this unit. That's what we're going to answer. Those questions. Why do we eat? Why do we breathe? What is it about doing that keeps us alive? Before we start, a little quick review on ATP and the first law of thermodynamics. Remember, the first law of thermodynamics, we cannot create or destroy energy, but we can change it. And that's what we're going to talk about, is changing that energy. And we're going to also talk about ATP. And that's pretty much the primary focus of this, is creating ATP, storing energy, not creating or destroying it, but storing it, changing it into that form of energy that ATP can store. And it's stored, remember, in the high energy bonds between the second and third phosphate. Just a real quick, ATP is an adenine group attached to a sugar. And again, don't worry, you don't need to know this, just kind of keep it in mind. And then 3 phosphate groups, adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphates. And the energy is stored in that last bond. All right? When we break that bond, the energy released is energy that the cell can actually use to work. All right? So why eat food? What is in food that we need? And there's some good food here. You know, you've got your basic In-N-Out, because In-N-Out, come on, and some Mexican food, and some sushi. I love sushi. And of course, you know, some Thai food. But what is it that's in food that we need? Glucose. Glucose is the thing that's in food that we need. Food either contains other things like proteins and lipids, but a lot of food contains carbohydrates that either that are glucose, not very often, or can be broken down to glucose. The bottom line is we need glucose for our energy. That's why we eat. The glucose in the food. A real quick reminder, glucose is a carbohydrate. It's a monosaccharide of carbohydrates, so it's one saccharide. All right, it is C6, H12O6. And we can count them. We're going to keep doing this a lot. C6, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons. There's 6 oxygens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then there's 12 hydrogens. And the 12 hydrogens are not as easy to count, but there's 1 there, 3 there, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you have 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. C6, H12O6. We're going to come back to that later. Make sure you should understand. The first step of respiration is glycolysis. You've eaten the food. Your digestive system has broken it down and broken it down to glucose. Your circulatory system has absorbed that glucose in it and is circulating it around the body, carrying it to each cell. The cell enters into, or the glucose enters into the cell through the membrane, diffusion, or maybe a channel protein. All right. And the first step is glycolysis. All right. And the glycolysis, to summarize it real quickly, the first step is breaking it down bring glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, remember C6H12. So we're turning C6H12O6, and we're going to turn it into something that only has C3, 3-carbon. So we're going to, but there's 2 of those. Still have all the carbons. Here's the thing about everything we're doing in this unit. You cannot create or destroy energy. You also can't create or destroy matter. So if I have C6H12O6, I have to account for every one of those molecules or every one of those atoms. I can't just say, oh, well, this hydrogen disappears. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't disappear. It has to go somewhere. If I say something comes from somewhere, I have to tell you where it comes from. I can't add an atom and go, oh, it just showed up. It doesn't work that way. I have to account for all 24 of those atoms, C6H12O6. I have to account for every one of them. All right. So far, to summarize glycolysis, and I'm going to get into the details, but to summarize glycolysis, I'm going to break it down into 2 3-carbon molecules, plus some other things. Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. This is kind of important. Make a note of it. Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm. We're not at the mitochondria yet. Mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell, makes ATP. No, yes, but that's not where glycolysis takes place. Glycolysis is the first step of respiration, and it takes place in the cytoplasm. So the glucose is entered the cytoplasm and is being broken down into 2 3-carbon molecules. So the first step of glycolysis is to use the energy from 2 ATP molecules to break glucose into 2 3-carbon molecules called pGal. Oh my God, it's a lot of words. Don't write that down. Do not write that down. There's going to be a lot of detail here that I don't want you to get. I'm giving you the background and the detail so that you understand the large picture. Trust me, when I say you don't need to know this, I mean you don't need to know it. You need to understand it. So work on the understanding. Don't worry about the details. All right? We're going to use the energy from 2 ATP molecules. Think of it as like activation energy. You have to add some energy into it to get the reaction going. Well, that's not what this is. This is more like we need energy to break the glucose up. Where do we get the energy from? 2 ATP molecules. But the whole idea of this is to make ATP. So we're in the hole. We're in debt already. Think of it like opening a business. If you have any business, I don't care what it is, you're going to have to spend some money before you make money. We're going to have to spend some ATP before we make ATP. All right? So we're using 2 ATP molecules to break glucose into a thing called pGal. Now, rather than write all that down, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Here I have a real simple image. It's just a rectangle with it's glucose. All right, so the next step is to bring along 2 ATP molecules, which when we break off the phosphate, because again, ATP, phosphate, 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 we're going to break this phosphate off. That releases all the energy. All right, it becomes ADP. So ATP, break off a phosphate, it becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And the result are 2 pGal molecules. What's pGal stand for? I have no clue. I don't care. I don't care if you know. Look it up. If that's what interests you, look it up. It's not important. What's important is that we are going from a 6-carbon into 2 3-carbons, but we still have 6 carbons. All right? And it cost us, we're now down 2 ATP. So we have spent 2 ATP to break glucose up. It takes energy to break it up. Costs us 2 ATP molecules. The next step, a phosphate group is then added to each pGal and 2 hydrogen atoms are removed. And the hydrogen atoms are picked up by a molecule called NAD. Oh, it's a lot of words. Forget it. Let's just take a look at the picture. Oh, and by the way, as we do this, 2 ATP molecules are formed, and the end result is pyruvic acid. Picture. 1,000 words. Here you go. This is where we left off. Again, we have the glucose, which we split into 2 pyruvic acids, but it costs us 2 ATP. All right. So the next step is to break off 2 hydrogens from that. So right now, if I looked at the formula, this would be, and you don't need to know this. Don't write this down. This would be C3H6O3. They broke in half. But we're removing 2 hydrogens from each of them. And where are we going to put them? We can't just, they don't just disappear. We have to put them on this thing called NAD, and it becomes NADH. So NAD plus 2 hydrogens becomes NADH2. That's a 2. NADH2. All right? Again, you don't need to know this. Just pay attention. So what do we start with? We started with glucose over here. All right? Used 2 ATPs. We ended up with 2 PGALs right here. We broke off 2 hydrogens. Where do we put the hydrogens? NADH2s. You do kind of need to know that one. You need to know that hydrogens right now are stored on NADH2. Why are we storing them there? Get to that later. All right? In the process, we actually have enough energy now to create 2 ATPs. So while over here, it costs us 2 ATPs, here we get plus 4 ATPs. We are now up 2 ATPs. We have made more ATPs than we started with, but that's not enough. We need more, all right? So keep going. When all that happens, we end up with pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid is a 3-carbon molecule that is it's pyruvic acid, 3-carbon molecules, so it would be C3, H, I got to do some math here real quick, H4. Why 4? Because we removed 2 hydrogens. And then O3, C3H4O3, pyruvic acid. So remember, we started with a 6-carbon sugar, glucose, and we broke that into 2 3-carbon PGAL molecules. So whatever happens to one of those is going to happen to the other, because we've got to count for all of them. We've got to take that that glucose molecule, C6H12O6, and we got to put it through whatever it's about to go through, but we got to do it twice because we broke it into 2 parts. So think of that. We'll keep that in mind, okay? So one more time, what are we looking at here? There's this PGAL. We take off the 2 hydrogens, store them on NADH2. End result, pyruvic acid. So what do you need to know? That is what you care about. What do you need to know? Great question. Fair question. We start with glucose. You ought to know where we get it. We get it from food. Get the glucose from food. We used 2 ATP. We end up, I don't care about this. Don't care if you know that. Don't care. Okay, so we're down 2 ATP. We got 4 ATP. I can spell ATP. Yeah, I should do that right for you guys. Sorry about that. 4 ATP, which means we are now plus 2 ATPs. And you need to know this. We end up with 2 pyruvic acids and 2 NADH2 molecules. All right? So again, put it in blue this time. We start with glucose. It costs us 2 ATPs. Don't care about this. We get 4 ATPs, so a total of 2. We've actually made a profit of 2. What do we end up with at the end of glycolysis? 2 pyruvic acids, 2 NADH2 molecules. That's it. Start with glucose. Do that different color for you. Start with glucose. Nah, I don't like that color. Start with glucose. 2 ATPs. Split it off. 2 pyruvic acids plus 2 NADH2s. That's it. Start with glucose. Split it into 2 3-carbon molecules. Call it pyruvic acid. We need to get rid of some hydrogens. Store them in the NADHs, the NADs, which becomes NADH2. And as a result, we get 2 more ATP. That's all you need to know. That's it. I'll say it one more time. You start with glucose. We split it into 2 3-carbon molecules. Pyruvic acid. Plus, we get 2 ATPs, and we store 2 hydrogens, 4 hydrogens. We make 2 NADH2 molecules. Okay? To summarize this, glucose is broken into 2 3-carbon molecules with the energy from 2 ATP, so it costs us 2 ATP. 2 hydrogens are broken off and stored on NAD, which becomes NADH2. We get 4 ATP out of that. So it's a profit of 2 of them. And the end product is pyruvic acid. If you're going to write anything down from all this, this is what you write down. All right? This should be in your notes. Got it? I mean, you could put the drawing in there. I have no problem with that. It might help you understand. But don't think that you're going to see the drawing on the test or anything. You need to understand the process of glycolysis. Starts with glucose. We use 2 ATP. We end up with 2 hydrogens, or actually 4 hydrogens, but 2 of them broken off and stored on NADH2. So actually this is wrong. This should be 4 hydrogens. My bad. 4 hydrogens stored on NADH2. We get a profit of 2 ATPs, and we end up with pyruvic acid. That's it. Okay? The thing to remember is, again, I have to tell you where all the atoms go. So here you can see glucose. We've been over that. Well, here is what pyruvic acid looks like. You can see this is C6, H12O6, all right, minus the 4 hydrogens. So in actual, it's now not C6, H12O6, it's C. Wow, can't spell today. C6H8O6, and we broke that into 2. So we should have C3H4O3. That's what pyruvic acid should be. Well, that's what it is. Here's 1 carbon, here's 1 carbon, here's 1 carbon. C3, H4, or let's go with the oxygens. 1 oxygen, 2 oxygen, 3 oxygen, 3 oxygens, and then finally 1, 2, 3, 4 hydrogens. C3H4O3. You don't need to know that. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about the formulas. I'm giving it to you to show you that the atoms don't go anywhere. I have to tell you where they all go. But you're going, well, Mr. Williamson, C6H12O6. Now we're down to C3H4O3. Yeah, but remember, we have 2 of these. So it's actually C6H8O3 or O6. And then we also have the 4 down here. So it all adds up. Don't worry about the details. Have an idea of what happens. Understand the summary. Glucose is broken into 2 3-carbon molecules called pyruvic acid. We break off 4 hydrogens, store them on NADH2, and we get a profit of 2 ATPs. All right? Here's the thing. After glycolysis, the pyruvic acid, what we're going to talk about, 1 of 2 things can happen. It either can be a cell is short on oxygen, and in that case we're going to talk about anaerobic respiration, or it can be a cell, which are like most cells, that aerobic respiration. It has enough oxygen. That's what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about in our next video, we're going to talk about aerobic respiration. So again, real quick review. Why do we eat? It has glucose. I haven't explained why we breathe yet. Why do we eat? It has glucose. We need glucose. Glucose in that ring, in those bonds, is the energy that our body, our cells, can break down and create and make ATP. The first process of that is called glycolysis. It takes place in the cytoplasm. Glycolysis is breaking down a 6-carbon molecule, glucose, into 2 3-carbon molecules. In the process, we make 2 ATP. We take 4 hydrogens, and we make 2 NADH2 molecules. That's it. That's all you got to know. Okay? There's a lot of detail in there, and hopefully if you understood the detail, you get the big picture. If you have any questions, please ask them in the end questions, or ask them in class. I'll be glad to answer it. All right? I know there's a lot of information. Don't worry about it. Get the big picture. That's what I'm trying to get you. You're never going to see that diagram on a test or anything. You'll see it in your notes because it'll help you understand and prepare for the test. Again, you have any questions, let me know. Ask them in class, ask them in Ed Puzzle. I hope you took good notes. Good luck.